Good morning. Namaste. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Abhi Janamanchi, one of the ministers here, and I welcome you to worship this morning.
Namaste. My name is Cami Shankar Boyle, your worship associate for today's service. We are a religious community where love works. Whether you are joining us in person or online, know that whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your gender identity, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here.
If you're new to Cedar Lane and feel comfortable doing so, would you raise your hand so our ushers and greeters can offer you a welcome gift? I do see some guests. Welcome. There's also a brochure that talks about Cedar Lane and also provides a place for you to share your information with us. Please place the completed form in the offering plate during the offering.
We hope that everyone will join us after the service at the Engagement Fair, which provides a great opportunity to learn about how love works at Cedar Lane through service opportunities and ministries.
I was there after the first service, and the energy was incredible, and so many wonderful ministries and opportunities for engagement. So please, whether you are a member or a friend or a visitor, I hope you will take some time to at least get a sense of how our mission and ministry work here at Cedar Lane. Also, our member Tim Persons will be out in the courtyard taking pictures of members to include the pictures in the membership directory. So if you would like your picture taken, come as you are, and Tim will do the rest. And another way we hope love will work next Sunday is when we try to have a fire drill after each service. So, which is our annual effort to make sure we are prepped in case something like that happens at Cedar Lane. So we will hope to have a fire drill after each service around 10:15 so that our children and youth can also join the fire drill. So we'll have more details next week.
In this caring community, the pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. Today's pastoral visitor is Helen Pekacek, who will be available at the Joys and Sorrows table.
It's Phil Smith.
Phil Smith, sorry. Phil Smith, who will be available at the Joys and Sorrows table during and after service if you would like to share a care or concern.
We do believe in reincarnation, yes. So Helen has reincarnated into Phil. Thank you, Phil. And now let us turn and greet our neighbors, especially our new folks. Hello, Deborah.
I see your beauty. I hear your need. I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute that source in you. Let us work together for unity and love. Let us work together for unity and love. I offer you peace, I offer you love, I offer you friendship. I see your beauty, I hear your need, I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute that source in you.
Come, let us look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of our existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Let us look well, therefore, to this day.
As William Perry kindles the chalice, symbol of our gathered community, please rise in body and/or in spirit to share in unison the chalice lighting words on the screen. To face the world's shadows, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's
terrors,
a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives.
Please remain as you are for our hymn. There are numerous strings in your lute. The words are on screen, or will be, and also in your gray hymnal. So we're going to sing the refrain, and the choir is going to sing each verse, and then we'll go back and forth. So it's a call and response kind of hymn. It's a beautiful hymn set to, the words are by Rabindranath Tagore, and set to music. Please be seated. We gather each week not for our needs alone, but to bear witness to our joys and sorrows, accomplishments and disappointments. We gather to quiet our hearts and pause the pace of our minds. We gather to unhook the busyness that we carry around in our lives and to sit and be with one another. We gather to share company, a bond of soul searching. We gather to be present to the beauty and brokenness in our world. We gather our own secret sorrows, heartbreaks, and burdens that are too potent to be shared. We hold in our hearts those among us who are mourning a deep loss and those whose lives have passed who still enrich us. We remember those for whom parenting is a spiritual practice, who live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain. We send healing wishes to those struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions. We hold in our hearts those who have suffered abuse or injustice, those who are survivors or are surviving. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to all those whose lives are lost or impacted by calamities and violence in our world. We see into the flame of truth, would be strengthened by the light of life, and guided by the glow of love that will not let us go. So I invite you now to center yourselves for a time, inviting your mind, body, and spirit into this space, made sacred by our presence and the presence of the Holy, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. Find a comfortable position in your chair and settle in, settle down. Place your feet on the floor, your palms in your lap. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so, or focus your attention to one spot in this room. Roll your shoulders slowly forward and slowly back, allowing your shoulders to relax. Let them slump a bit. Lower your chin and relax your neck muscles. And as you relax your body, relax your limbs, your hands, your legs, your feet. And as you settle deeper within, in that place of silence and honesty and love and courage, take a deep, refreshing breath, hold it for a moment, and gently release it through your mouth. Let us try it together. Let us breathe in through our nose, hold it, and release it through our mouth. Let's take another breath together. Now notice the stages of complete breath. Breathing in, holding it, and releasing it. Breathing in, holding it, releasing it. Breathing in peace, breathing out love. And as we breathe in and out, I invite you to join me in chanting the Hindu mystic syllable Om, considered to be the primordial sound of the universe, of all that is, our breath and our beating heart. Join me in the Hindu chant, Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. When we chant it 3 times, we are invoking inner peace, communal peace, and universal peace. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Take another deep breath, hold it, and release it. As we enter the silence together, those among us who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of the loss of a loved one are invited to rise in body and or in spirit. May all be well. May all be happy. May all be peaceful. May all be filled with loving kindness. May no one suffer. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. So may it be. Each week we give and receive an offering to sustain the mission and ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church that allows us to live out our values and our convictions both within, among, and beyond our community. We also share the plate twice a month with an organization that is in alignment with our mission and our values. Today, we share the plate with Action in Montgomery, AIM, with which we have had a long relationship since its inception and founding 20 years ago. AIM is a community-based organization that is engaged in important work in our county, in our region, and in our state on immigrant justice issues, racial justice issues, environmental justice, and creating a better community for all who live here and work here. I would like to welcome Tanushree Datta Isaacman, a community organizer with AIM, to come forward and share some more information and reflection about AIM and its work. Welcome, Tanushree.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tanushree Datta Isaacman, and I'm a community organizer with Action in Montgomery. I wanted to thank you for opening and sharing your temple, your place of worship, and your sanctuary with me today. In turn, I wanted to share with you one of my formative experiences with organizing and what keeps me in this work. I was in Baltimore late September 2018, 31 Hopkins Plaza, a government building. I stood in the gray lobby by the elevators holding a 1.5-year-old girl in lacy pink dress who was crying. I was holding her as though she were one of my own children, close against me, and I was pacing back and forth, telling her not to cry, that everything was going to be okay. The very same things that I tell my children when they're hurt. She was the daughter of an AIM tenant leader who had been arrested by ICE on his way to work. This was his first hearing before an immigration judge. The courtroom was small, a few wooden pews on either side. When her father was brought into the room, he was shackled, wearing brown garb. She saw him and she wanted to go to him. We had argued with the guards to permit us to take her in. It was one request that her father had made, that he wanted so much to see his daughter because he wasn't sure the next time he would be able to see her. We were trying to honor that request. The guards came in, insisted that she had to leave. So she was upset. And I was trying to comfort this child, knowing full well that I possessed no such assurance that all would be well. But we got to work. We found a lawyer. We spoke with foreign policy experts, with gang violence experts, with family members in Guatemala. We requested and received letters of support from officials from local government to state government. We helped his lawyer build his case. The clergy leaders of Action in Montgomery, including yours, met with him, the detained AIM leader. Conversations that were had across telephone lines and a thick slab of plexiglass. We put up our hands against that plexiglass, trying to show him some semblance of humanity that existed. We lit candles, a faith community of different races, different ages, different languages coming together and resolute. And some weeks later, we met in that same room. Recognizing the merits of his case, the judge welcomed the AIM leader to the United States and granted him permission to apply for a work permit, and granted him permission to remain with his daughter. In a time when our country, our politics are so divisive and so divided, seeing 30 clergy leaders of different creeds in their collars and their full regalia come together and claim this Guatemalan man as one of their own, to observe in the clergy leaders a quiet but firm resolve of action will continue to inspire me. This organizing work has sparked a kind of relentless faith in me that had laid dormant and quiet for some time. It's not enough to sign petitions. We have to organize, build a broad-based power organization that comes to politicians with our agenda, the people's agenda. When they see our diversity and our numbers, as they did on March 14th of this year at our AIM action, they see power. And that is how we have won high-quality, free after-school programs for 1,200 Black and brown and poor children in our county in the highest poverty elementary schools. And that is how we have seen over $725 million to build over 15,000 units of affordable housing for our seniors and our low-income residents. And that is how we have won over $30 million to rebuild 4 community centers in historic African American neighborhoods here in Montgomery County. We have more work to do in Montgomery County, and we'll only be successful if we continue to build our broad and diverse coalition. Thank you for your curiosity, your fighting spirit, and your generosity today.
Thank you, Tanushree, for your inspiring words about the amazing work that AIM is doing. This is a way in which we live out our faith and make love work in our community, in our larger community. So this is an opportunity for us to practice radical generosity. So as the ushers come forward, I invite us to dig deep and give of ourselves and our gifts generously, both to support the ministry of Cedar Lane and the ministry of AIM. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received.
As a Hindu UU, clinical social worker, and bicultural woman of color in an interfaith and interracial marriage, my husband and I are often straddling cultures, beliefs, religions, holidays, and perspectives as we raise our two young biracial boys. Our current political climate has served as a challenge, but also a call to action on how we want to parent. Not only how to navigate the typical parenting stressors over power differences, activities, and friendship issues, but also the bigger and deeper questions on the men of character we hope our sons grow into. In a stressed out world full of judgment, criticism, fear, hate, overspending, silence, and complacency, I sometimes feel overwhelmed with the monumental task of raising children. But the stories of Gandhi's life and his commitment to nonviolence, non-materialism, and peaceful resistance has served as a guidepost to our lives and provide us with strength and courage in times of fear and frustration. The stories of Gandhi, displayed here, provide reassurance that perhaps our families, communities, and Earth will be okay, and maybe together we can inspire all of our children to gently shake the world. These are a few of the beliefs I find most inspiring. The belief in satyagraha, translated to mean truth force, was Gandhi's message regarding the importance of peaceful protest, living simply and non-violently. The belief that we are not perfect. We do occasionally, or perhaps often, lose our temper, but we can use these times as an opportunity to transform ourselves through self-reflection. The belief of standing united with the economically advantaged and disadvantaged as one of the only ways to see real political and social change. And the belief in intentionally avoiding judgment, bias, healing hatred, and avoiding violence, even in the face of oppression and discrimination, and focusing on peacefulness and love. And that is what true courage and Gandhi's legacy is all about. So as we honor and celebrate the life of Gandhi and his message, let us all remember that together we can all, in a gentle way, shake the world.
Sought thee with
Thank you, members of the choir, Henry, for those beautiful poems of Rabindranath Tagore from Gitanjali, the body of work that received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. And thank you, Cami, for your beautiful reflection, lifting up what Rita Nakashima Brock calls interstitial integrity. Interstitial integrity is the way in which we live in and through the interstices, the in-betweenness of the many identities and challenges and life passages that we encounter in life, and to do that through practices of integrity. Thank you. So this is also a wonderful day at the end of a momentous week, all of which we have been witness to, so I don't have to go into details. And it is good to be together here, to find a way to step back, step aside, and reflect. It's also a wonderful day because of two threshold moments that are emerging in two ancient traditions. Rosh Hashanah begins after sundown today, which then is the beginning of the high holidays leading up to Yom Kippur, the day of the day of repentance, and these are the days of awe. Today is also the Hindu festival of Navaratri, the 9-day celebration for Durga, the goddess, the fierce goddess of courage, of valor, of somebody who is known to really get evil out of this world. So I leave you with both those wonderful metaphors to think about. At the end of the 20th century, when Time magazine asked its readers to pick the person of the century, Mahatma Gandhi was a close second, only to Albert Einstein. It shouldn't come as a surprise that Mahatma, or the great soul, a name given to Gandhiji by Rabindranath Tagore, endures in the best part of our minds, where our ideals are kept as the embodiment of nonviolence, peaceful resistance, human rights, and peace. His ideas and methods of civil disobedience and nonviolent activism have been studied, emulated, and practiced by many. Bayard Rustin and Martin Luther King Jr. learned them and applied them here. So did Nelson Mandela, Lech Wałęsa, Václav Havel, the unknown Chinese person who defied the tanks on Tiananmen Square on 1989, as well as the millions of young climate strikers last week. For a person who was born in 1869 and has been dead 71 years, he was assassinated on January 30th, 1948, Gandhiji is extraordinarily well known across the globe. Now, the world knows of him, but what should it know about him? Because the flesh and blood Gandhi was a most unlikely saint, and saints are hard to live with. And this one's personal habits were particularly odd, even weird. Mondays were days of silence when he refused to speak. A devoted vegetarian, he indulged in all kinds of faddish dietetic experiments that sometimes came near to killing him. He napped every day with a mud poultice on his abdomen and brow. He scheduled his bowel movements for 20 minutes, morning and afternoon, and had a cleansing enema every night. Yeah. every afternoon he did an hour or two of spinning on his little hand wheel, the charkha, sometimes 400 yards at a sitting. I am spinning the destiny of India, he would say. And then there are those many bewildering and contradictory truths that are used to both canonize and vilify him. Gandhiji was a mystic who was a hard-headed realist, a pacifist who all his life, to quote Bayard Rustin, was an angelic troublemaker. A revolutionary who was a staunch conservative, a strict disciplinarian who challenged the established order, a shrewd politician who would implicitly trust all his opponents, a visionary who refused to look beyond one step forward, a kind-hearted teacher and leader who was a harsh taskmaster, a staunch Hindu who opposed all rituals and never set foot in a temple. A racist in his early 20s who believed in a hierarchy of civilizations with Europeans at the top, Indians just below them, and Africans at the way bottom, but who in later years became an ardent anti-racist who promoted the equality of all races and directly inspired struggles against apartheid in South Africa and the civil rights struggle here in the United States. A believer in the caste system who was strongly and adamantly opposed to untouchability and discriminating on the basis of caste. A charismatic leader who could mobilize millions to march with him, but did not hold any kind of political position or crave after political power. So a convincing case can be built for either side of all such mutually exclusive alternatives while depicting Gandhiji. And he himself admitted to this when he wrote, "In my search for truth, I have never cared for consistency. I must admit my many inconsistencies. I might as well endorse Emerson's saying that a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." So as we prepare to celebrate his 150th birthday, which falls on October 2nd, what ways does Gandhiji speak in this day, at this time, to all of us, to the predicaments, prevarications, plagues, plights, and plunders of the 21st century? Gandhiji's biographer, Louis Fisher, once said that his greatness lay in doing what everyone could do, but doesn't. You see, by his example, Gandhiji provided us with a signpost for moral living, leaving us with some really valuable insights about the way one's life should be organized and oriented and acted upon so as to not become dysfunctional to the self, society, or our planet, and provided guidelines to help us navigate through difficult choices, decisions, and crises. For example, his 7 social sins warn us against politics without principle, wealth without work, commerce without morality, education without character, pleasure without conscience, science without humanity, and worship without sacrifice. Ramchandra Guha, a biographer of Mahatma Gandhi, in his book, Gandhi, The Years That Changed the World from 1914 to 1948, writes, Gandhiji is still relevant on account of the method of social protest he pioneered. This is undoubtedly true, attested by the ubiquity of boycotts, strikes, collective vigils, and other techniques that Gandhiji pioneered and practiced with world historical results. Activists fighting for the environment, for refugees and immigrants' rights, and against systemic racism, white supremacy, and violence continue to be inspired by satyagraha, Gandhiji's invented term meaning literally holding fast to the truth, or as he variously described it, truth force, love force, or soul force, to describe his method of nonviolent direct action in terms that also imbued it with a moral content and authority. The aim of satyagraha was to arouse the conscience of oppressors and invigorate their victims with a sense of moral agency. It obliged protesters to always keep an open mind and be ever ready to find that what we believed to be truth was, after all, untruth. End of quote. That's what he said. Gandhiji recognized early on that societies with diverse populations inhabit a post-truth age. He wrote, "We will never all think alike, and we shall always see truth in fragments and from different angles of vision." And even Gandhi's harshest critics do not deny that he steadfastly defended and eventually sacrificed his life for many values that are under assault today. Fellow feeling for the marginalized, solidarity and sympathy for people who are being oppressed and for people of different nations, religions, races, sexual orientations, and gender identities. Now, Gandhiji would not at all be surprised by what's happening today, by neo-fascist upsurges in what he called nominal Western democracies, which in his view were merely better at concealing really well their foundations of violence, abuse, and exploitation than explicitly fascist nations were. He thought that democracy in the West, and I quote, was clearly an impossibility so long as the wide gulf between the rich and the hungry millions persists. And as long, he said, as legislators act like a prostitute, his infamous term for the British Parliament. Yep, sit with that in the context of this Brexit drama. And he said, voters take their cue from their newspapers, which are often dishonest. True democracy, or Swaraj, involved much more participation from citizens, he believed. It required them to combine self-rule with self-restraint, politics with ethics. Turning his back on his middle-class origins, he brought millions of peasants and poor people into political life and social activism. To him, the age of democracy, this age of awakening of the poorest of the poor, as he called it, was a cause for celebration. And he conceived of democracy as something that gives the weak the same chance as the strong, in which inequalities based on possession and non-possession, color, race, creed, or sex vanish. End of quote. Nonviolent opposition to the arbitrary use of state power is a manifestation of the legacy of Gandhiji today. Social work with the poor and disenfranchised is another. Gandhiji himself placed as much importance on reconstruction, reconciliation, as on protest and resistance. Today, Gandhiji's political thought resonates again. In recent years, many scholars have asserted that he has much to say about the issues that make our present moment so volatile: rising inequality, militarism, environmental devastation, the rise of demagoguery, authoritarianism, and the breakdown of democratic governance. In several of his books and articles, the Indian thinker Ashish Nandi has presented Gandhi as boldly confronting the hyper-masculine political culture of his time, which sanctified institutionalized violence and ruthless social Darwinism. So Gandhiji emerges as a radical figure. Come on up. It's okay. You can hang out here. Gandhiji emerges as a radical figure who diverged from the dominant ideologies of Marxism, liberalism, and nationalism, insisted on the need for self-transformation, moral persuasion, and sacrifice. His great-granddaughter Leela Gandhi sees him as refashioning and reimagining democracy in opposition to a widespread striving for the will to power into a spiritual regimen of imperfectionism. A spiritual regimen of imperfectionism. So Gandhiji's ideas on religious pluralism and interfaith cooperation also speak directly to the world we live and labor in today. He was at odds both with secularists who confidently look forward to God's funeral and with monotheists who insisted that theirs was the one and true God. He believed that no religion had a monopoly on the truth. He argued that one should accept the faith into one which was born, hence his opposition to conversion, but to seek always to interpret it in the most broad-minded way possible. And he actively encouraged friendships across religions. In his ashram, for example, he held a daily prayer meeting at which texts from different religions were read and sung. At the time, his position appeared rather eccentric. In retrospect, it seems to be both prophetic and precocious. In a world driven by religious misunderstanding, it can help us cultivate mutual respect, understanding, and recognition. Now, Gandhi and his legacy also speak directly to the question of environmental sustainability. The economic rise in China and India has brought a long-suppressed and quintessentially Gandhian question to the fore. How much should a person consume? So long as the West had a monopoly on modern lifestyles, the question simply did not arise. But if most Chinese and most Indian people come like most Americans and many Europeans do, to own and drive a car and have the same kind of lifestyles that we here have and enjoy, this earth will become a devastated place. Back in 1928, Gandhiji had warned about the unsustainability on a global scale of Western patterns of production and consumption. He said, God forbid that India should ever take to industrialization after the manner of the West. The economic imperialism of a single tiny island kingdom, England, is today keeping the world in chains. If an entire nation of 300 million people then took to similar economic exploitation, it would strip the world bare like locusts. Now, I can keep going, but we're running out of time. For me, some of the most important reasons for the continued relevance of Gandhiji, his life and his message being one and the same, or what we see all around us. The need for peaceful resistance in the midst of wanton violence. The need for restraint in the midst of mindless consumerism. The need for equality in the midst of rising inequalities. The need for voluntary service in the midst of self-centeredness and narcissism. And the need for conservation in the midst of rampant destruction. To millions born after his death, Gandhiji's name continues to resound with inspirational powers unique to the needs of our century. In a world of plastic modernity and growing apathy and fatigue to violence and suffering, to the broadening chasm between the pleasure-loving wealthy and the hundreds of millions of people who never sleep a night without hunger, Gandhiji's passionate life and message of radical love and acceptance inspires admiration, emulation, and practice. His passionate commitment to eradicating poverty, nonviolent activism, willingness to accept punishment for civil disobedience were lessons he taught through his life and his death. 100 years from now, if humanity still exists, people across the world may still scarcely believe, as Albert Einstein once said of Gandhiji, that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood did journey upon this earth. As those who wait outside Birla House in Delhi, where he was assassinated, daily shout, Mahatma Ji Amar Rahe, Mahatma Ji Amar Rahe, Mahatma Ji Amar Rahe. The great soul is immortal. The great soul is immortal. The great soul is immortal. So may it be. And the people say, Amen. Please rise in body and or in spirit to sing We Would Be One, number 318. The words are on screen and in your gray hymnal. Please remain as you are, and if you feel comfortable doing so, hold your neighbor's hand or bump elbows as we close our time together with these words adapted from Mahatma Gandhi. And after each line, I invite you to say, it is possible to live in peace. Let's try it. It is possible to live in peace. If people with courage and vision can rise to lead in nonviolent action, the winter of despair can, in the twinkling of an eye, be turned into the summer of hope. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence is not a garment to put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being. It is possible to live in peace. If a single person achieves the highest kind of love, it will be sufficient to neutralize the hate of millions. It is possible to live in peace. If we are to reach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. it is possible to live in peace. The future depends on what we do in the present. It is possible to live in peace. Go in peace. Go making peace. Live gently, love mightily, and bow to the mystery. Please be seated for the postlude. So Mahatma Gandhi was not only a saint, but also a prophet, but he was not a joyless saint or prophet. He actually loved to have fun and enjoyed a good time. Though he never went to concerts, he loved music of various kinds and loved listening to lots of music. So, invoking that spirit of Mahatma Gandhi, I would now invite Henry to share more about our postlude.
Thank you, Abhi. I just wonder if Gandhi was cool. He died in 1948. New Orleans jazz came in around 1895, thereabouts. So 50 years worth of self-expression that I'm sure he would have loved had he had a chance to hear it. So this Friday night, speaking of children, we're going to have the Capitol Focus Jazz Band here. This is the young group that, for those who have attended church here for many, many years, did not perform. They played during the July 4th services. They're young, some of them are high school age, some of them are college age, and they really rip up a storm. We programmed this concert on Friday night at 7 o'clock so that young families could come, or families with young children could come. So I hope you'll consider that. And just as a tease, here's their version of Lulu's Back in Town.
Sit or stand or dance.
Gotta get my old tuxedo pressed. Gotta sew a button on my vest, 'cause tonight I've got to look my best. Lulu's back in town. Gotta get a half a buck somewhere. Got to shine my shoes and slick my hair. Got to find myself a boutonniere. Lulu's back in town. You can tell all my pets, all my Harlem coquettes, Mr. Otis regrets that he won't be around. You can tell the mailman not to call. I ain't coming home until the fall, and I might not get back home at all. Lulu's back in town. pets. Oh, my Harlem coquettes. Steely Fingers regrets that he won't be around. You can tell the mailman not to call. I ain't coming home until the fall, and I might not get back home at all. Lulu's back in town. Hey, Lulu's back in town. Huh? Lulu's back in town. My, that woman is back in town. That woman is back in town.